Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Games Parlay, but it actually is Games Parlay this time.
Woo!
How's it going, gents?
Hey,
I'm doing great. How are
it's
you
good.
feeling?
How you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be doing this kind of more open discussion thing again. Get another episode on the podcast, and we have a ton of stuff coming up, and so I thought it was kind of important that we start somewhere. We have, at the time of recording, those of you watching live obviously know, but at the time of recording, we have the Switch 2 Direct coming up. We just had a Switch 1 Direct, and just a bunch of stuff. And so things are about to get a little crazy and speculative and really fun on the content side. So it's just fun to kind of get together and pick a topic, draw a topic out of the hat, and just start chatting. Um, so yeah, so let's do that. Today we are going to be talking about the Legend of Zelda live action movie that is set to come out in 2 years.
Yeah, almost to the day.
Yeah. We have known this movie was in the works. I forget which top name at Nintendo like tweeted about it.
Yeah, the classic. This is Miyamoto.
Yes. But it was also like the same day that they tweeted that, don't worry, you'll hear about the Switch 2 within the fiscal year. And they are only technically correct. They are so close to not being right, even in that. But we are getting it in the fiscal year. But yes, we have known about. Have always been rumors, but then we had an official tweet saying this was happening. And then we have a release date. And so we're gonna kind of speculate and have talk about a wish list and those kinds of things. But let's start with the announcement itself. How did you guys find this?
Unfortunately, I found it the way I find everything. I just saw it on Blue Sky, but
Uh-huh.
that's okay.
I feel like I did too. I feel like it was in a post that was like making fun of the app and being like, we were all making fun of this, and now they've just gone and done the most Nintendo thing possible.
Yeah.
It's perfect. They did such a good job with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
They
I
need to
also
start sending out just emails. Just make an email list and just be like, all right, here's this news.
yeah. Instead, we have an app.
That's so funny.
So I hadn't downloaded the app yet, but I did shortly after I saw this announcement. Because I meant to. I actually think the idea of this Nintendo Today app is pretty cool and interesting. But yeah, so they announced it the day after a Switch 1 Direct, which we didn't. I don't know. I didn't believe we were gonna get one. I thought maybe, but not this close to the Switch 2 Direct.
Yeah, less than a week before.
Yeah.
Classic WND.
Yes.
Yeah. Do we think that that's going to be the last Switch 1 Direct for real, or because I have a hunch that maybe they'll keep doing Switch 1 Directs for games that are like quote unquote last gen.
I have no idea.
Right.
No idea.
I would imagine that we'll still get Switch titles, but not like individual Switch 1 Directs. Like they'll just all lump into one Direct now. Some will have stuff for Switch 2.
I guess it's not really titled like a Switch Direct. It's so, we'll just probably keep getting Nintendo Directs. Yeah, you're probably right.
And I'm sure for at least the next 2 years, I imagine we will have games that are dedicated to Switch 1 and 2. As they make the transition.
Sounds about right.
So, but yeah, so they had a Switch 1 Direct. They showed off a bunch of really cool stuff. That could be its own episode at some point. But they ended with this Nintendo Today app, which is a Nintendo News app. It's also got like dumb little activities, whatever. They're like for kids, I think, because they're pretty like. It's like, who's that Nintendo character? And it's like clearly Mario. But it's there. But yeah, so the very next day, so everybody's memeing on this app because, like, who cares? We all have Twitter and Blue Sky and Facebook and blah, blah, blah. And what they announced it on was the Nintendo Today app. They're like, "Hey, by the way, in 2 years you are gonna have a live action Zelda movie in theaters." March 26th, 2027. So, um, just Nintendo things. I will also say the app is super cool. If you haven't looked at it, Nintendo, we're not sponsored by Nintendo, but if Nintendo, I'll shill.
Yeah, we already do.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Like they just kind of post like stuff about their upcoming things. There's even stuff from like their old Zelda concerts and stuff is pretty cool.
Very cute animation to like open the app with like Mario running and stuff.
Yeah. But the thing that I love actually is the calendar. I know it's backwards for you guys. I don't know if it's backwards for stream or not, or the eventual video, but they have bullets for all the stuff that's releasing. So April 2nd is the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. It even has the stuff for like the hands-on experiences. Game release dates are on here because it showed Xenoblade
That's pretty cool.
Chronicles. So I think as more games get announced with release dates, the app will actually work as like a tracker for those.
Does it sync? Can it sync to your like Google Calendar? Do we know?
I don't think so, but
That'd be so cool.
it gets its own widget. So
Okay,
probably
I'll
not.
accept
So you
that.
can just have your regular calendar and your Nintendo calendar side by side.
Or more realistically, just Nintendo calendar, because who's checking their real calendar?
Right. So, I don't know. It's neat. They're posting like little blurbs and stuff on the thing, but the big thing, the bombshell, was that they have told us now when this movie is coming.
Yes.
And so let's hop into that. First, let's start with the obvious one. Okay, so we've had a Mario movie that is Nintendo's big jump back into the film industry since like the 80s, I believe. Maybe 90s. I don't remember when that terrible Mario movie came out. Um, but we're getting a live action Zelda movie. Let's start with that. How do we feel about the choice for live action as opposed to animation?
I don't like it.
Oh, I love it.
I'm gonna be
So
honest.
Yeah.
who
I
should go
want it
first?
animated.
Yeah.
um,
Why did you
yeah,
want animated?
yeah.
I thought that the rumor for a very long time was that there was gonna be like in a Studio Ghibli art style or similar. I thought that sounded really cool, especially with the kind of cel shaded art style that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are. I thought that would have translated great into an animated movie, so that's what I wanted. That's about it.
Yeah. I I do think an animated Zelda movie would be awesome, particularly in the Studio Ghibli format. I just strongly fear it's going to be harder to execute on that. You know, we got really lucky with like Spider-Verse and stuff and like being such a good movie. Animated movies are very difficult to nail the aesthetic of. Um and Mario, I feel like we also got lucky with like just a little bit in a wrong direction in that movie. That art style could have totally not worked for that film. I'm not much of an artist or a 3D designer or anything, so I really struggle to like communicate um that uh
I
but I do look to things like Lord of the Rings for great execution and adventure. The director did the new Planet of the Apes movies, and like I feel like it's also like backed by Sony too, if I recall correctly. I think it's a Sony Nintendo like
probably.
joint
Yeah.
thing.
It's Columbia Pictures. Is that Sony?
Yes.
Okay, then
And
yes.
and Columbia Pictures specifically has a great history with, you know, producing really well done visual effects for live action sequences. And so I just feel like given the team that they've assembled, they could have assembled an entirely different team and done it in a completely different way. But I feel like it's going to be really fun to see this done in a way that's so different from other successful video game movies. Because like Uncharted live action, terrible. uh, and then we got like the Mario movie, which was great. Last of Us, phenomenal, and that was in live action. And I just think it can be a fun way to connect to these characters.
Yeah.
Does scare me a little bit for Link.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if Link is an actual person, he's gonna have to talk, and I'm
Exactly.
scared to see how that plays out.
Yeah. I will say I could have gone for both, and I'm not just saying that to be the middleman of the podcast.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I would adore like a Ghibli style film, especially in that kind of darker range of like Princess Mononoke, where it's still very colorful, but it gets to be um, thematically and color tone wise dark. I think that would be absolutely incredible. In the same vein, I think as far as like from a business standpoint, I do think it makes sense for the live action if they commit and can make it a little bit darker. Because the Zelda series is
Right.
not as playful and colorful as a lot of the games look. These games are kind of brutal. As far as like the content in them.
Yeah.
Like Twilight Princess is pretty disturbing. There's quite a bit of disturbing imagery. I mean, obviously we're grown adults, it's fine, but like when you're talking about a franchise or a company that's well known for all ages, I kind of hope that live action can tap into. There's a bit less shock value when something spooky comes up on the screen. Um, I hope they can make Ganondorf truly menacing, and if we get Dark Beast Ganon, or some form of like full Ganon, that they can really show it off.
I would expect Ganon to be a like Thanos style like CG character.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of cool, and so long as let's talk ideal world, right? Like we get the exact version that we want with live action. Good action sequences. We get to see Link, being the cool hero with all of his, items. I hope we get to see, him using his array of tools that he has, in unique ways. I think
Tormenting a shopkeep in all of their jars.
Yeah, absolutely. That needs to happen at least once. But with complete seriousness.
Or an arrow with a frozen piece of meat on it.
Yes, yeah. So I think live action probably works better for Nintendo to sell, from that standpoint. So I think live action does make sense. On the flip side, I have a lot of concerns about that angle. I'm interested in seeing casting. I was wrong about some of the other castings in previous movies, so I'm not gonna provide too much comment until I see the movie.
That's fair.
But I am curious who is going to play Link and Zelda and Ganon. Like some of these characters have only just started speaking. We just got Ganondorf voiced by Matt Mercer, which was awesome. But is that who's gonna do the movie? Who knows? I don't know.
Speaking of concerns, I did pull up the IMDb page for this movie. I'm gonna start with Wes Ball. He's the director. I'm gonna list off the other movies that he's directed recently.
Yeah.
We've got the Maze Runner trilogy, being the Maze Runner, the Scorch Trials, and the Death Cure. I did not know there were 3 of those.
I did not either.
I saw the first one.
What was the third one
And then he
called?
also directed the Death Cure. Came out in 2018.
2018.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Anyway,
And
continue.
he also directed Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes from last year. And then we also have a writer attached to it. His name is Derek Connolly.
Actually, according to Deadline, it is now T.S. Nolan, who also worked on Maze Runner.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that was part of their recent update. Let me see. Updated 7:29 a.m.
He
I
did
think March
Pacific Rim
28th.
Uprising.
It says T.S. Nolan is now writing the screenplay before it was Derek Connolly.
Mm.
Okay, because Derek Connolly also wrote The Rise of Skywalker, so that made me nervous.
Was
So
that
that's
the
probably
was that the what's his name? Knives Out guy, Ryan Johnson one?
no, that was Last Jedi,
Okay, because I love
which
the
is my
Ryan
favorite
Johnson.
Star Wars movie personally.
Yeah, and
Me too.
people, I keep pissing people off when I say I love it.
Thank you.
Oh,
I agree. The Rise of Skywalker was the second J.J. Abrams one
I see.
because he did 7 and 9.
Yeah. So we got some stuff, and also that T.S. Nolan. I mentioned it earlier, but they wrote Pacific Rim Uprising. So if they just want like a giant battle scene, I think they can handle it.
For sure. And like
I have
Layla,
not
who
seen those
did
movies.
also do the Maze Runner trilogy along with Wes, and so I didn't watch any of the Maze Runner movies, but having a strong history between writer and director is a very positive benefit.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
and I think too, as this is still Nintendo we're talking about, and I think they have a much better grasp of their IP than they used to. I mean, when you look at like the Mario Brothers movie, you can even look beyond that, like the Zelda cartoon and the Mario cartoon. As iconic as those cartoons are nowadays, they are not like phenomenal, right? It's not what Nintendo would want to attach themselves to. Also, there was some Donkey Kong Country cartoon at one point that looks really bad.
I had no idea.
It looks god awful. Um, but I think Nintendo knows now what people expect out of them, uh, even in the film side. So I am hopeful that I don't know, I don't want like we look at Marvel movies, right? We can kind of expect the same 6 actors to show up. I would really hope that we can get some surprises with the Zelda movie. Um, but it still be quality and quality actors and all of that, which I assume we will get. Um, there was a visual gag earlier. I don't know if you saw it, Matt, while you were looking something up or reading stuff off, but Sterling Flash changed his background. Yeah, there it is, a photo of Tom Holland, who gets fan cast in the meme versions of the Zelda movie, but
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a real
I do not want.
a real possibility, when you're looking
Yeah.
at it.
I like Tom Holland.
I
I
do
don't know if he'd
too.
be
I
a
love
good
Tom
Link,
Holland.
but I like
I
Tom.
love Tom Holland, but yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah,
want him
this is not a Tom Holland diss. I think he's fantastic at what he does. I just don't think he would be my choice for Link necessarily. I don't even know who I
It
would
kind of
cast
seems
as
like
Link, but if I'm being honest, I don't have anybody like in mind. But
I don't either. The only at all news about casting, which isn't even really a thing, it's Hunter Schafer from Euphoria says, I love the game personally. I played it as a kid and I still play it now. Who knows? That would be pretty cool when asked about playing Zelda.
I didn't know that she'd commented
that-
on it, which is funny because like she is one of the most popular Zelda fan castings I see, and also is
Mhm.
like I'm like fully on board with it. I think she would be an
She looks the
awesome
part for sure.
Yeah.
so I mean, there's definitely stuff, and I think they're gonna be able to make it look good. I think that's something that I can kind of anticipate for sure. Is that like, I bet the movie looks good.
Oh yeah. Um it's I really hope, since they're going live action, I
Mhm.
really hope that they play very heavily into the high fantasy aspect of it, and give
Mhm.
us those sweeping landscapes and stuff, the very Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings kind
Yeah.
of style. It could be really cool. Also, thinking about casting, I do kind of hope that for Link they just kind of cast a new name.
That'd be cool.
It would be a great opportunity for something like that.
Yeah.
I find that unlikely personally. Just like when you look at the cast for the Mario movie, like
Yeah, yeah.
everyone in there is a very famous Hollywood actor.
I
Um,
guess I guess I am
maybe they'll
thinking
be
that they would
different,
want to
but
be
I don't know.
artistic, but
Here's
I shouldn't imagine that Nintendo would want to be artistic. That's a good point.
well,
They want to print that money.
Yeah,
here's the difference though. Is you look at something like Mario, and everybody knows Mario, right? Like your grandma can look at that and go, "That's Mario," right? And I think for like a kids movie, because with the Mario movie, you're specifically targeting families and kids, right? And I think having big name actors helps sell it for parents who could not care less about Mario, right? They're like, oh, Pratt and uh uh all the other actors, Jack
yeah,
Blackson or
Anya Taylor Joy was
whoever.
Peach.
Yeah, right. Like there are names that like people are gonna look at. And I think parents will go,
yeah.
okay, it won't be
Queen's Gambit.
right. Whereas the thing about
That was a good show.
it was good.
Yeah,
The thing about Zelda is that generally Zelda is like the experimental franchise. I don't think people talk about that enough in terms of Nintendo's library, but like Zelda is super experimental. Um
yeah,
it like when you look at Breath of the Wild, I mean, it was the game that absolutely shifted the 3D landscape. Like just like Mario 64 once did, but like every game was like, "Oh shoot, Breath of the Wild is the new thing." Um Link to the Past did that. Like Link to the Past on the SNES was that game. That affected every top-down action game after its release. Um Ocarina of Time was the 3D, so it keeps happening with Zelda. And so I do have some semblance of hope that Nintendo will carry that into film and be like, let's get weird with it. Like Mario worked, it made us $1 bajillion. Like let's get really weird and experimental with the Zelda movie. Um and they've dipped their toes into giving these characters voices, and I think now probably is the best time for them to really sell a Zelda movie.
yeah. I will say, to your point, this specific writer and director would be the way to go if you are wanting to like take a chance on an interesting, unique style that's unexpected.
Mhm.
Just thinking about the style of that last Planet of the Apes movie and the Maze Runner films. But it's hard to say. Like Matt said, money printing machine.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I guess Zelda's not their most popular thing in the world. So like everybody knows Mario.
Mhm.
You go up to somebody and you mention Zelda or Link, and not as strong of a chance that they're gonna have any idea what you're talking about.
It's gonna
Um,
today. It's gonna be Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, or Smash Bros. Is gonna be their recognition, unless they're
yes,
like our
uh,
age.
It's true.
and I really don't want them to adapt Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, at least not yet. Um,
I wanted to ask you guys about that. What do you guys think the story is going to be? Like, is it going to be based off a specific game?
That's interesting. The my initial gut reaction says they will probably want to reference Ocarina of Time as many times as possible.
That's my
yeah,
gut instinct as well.
yeah. Um, I can't think of a way of doing it not cheesy, but I would love Majora's Mask.
Mm.
But it's like there's just so many gamey elements of that That's why I'm not paid to be a screenwriter, but I can't think of how to do it.
That'll be for
Um,
the spin-off TV series. That'll be their foray.
True. Yeah. They're Knuckles.
Yes. I think for something like Zelda, they're gonna go super referential, which I think is fine. But I think they're gonna do a whole new thing. I think this is gonna be an original story, that's going to take elements from the games. Because the games already do that, right? Like there are references to Ocarina of Time all over Breath of the Wild. Um,
It's true.
in fact, the Great Deku Tree itself is an Ocarina of Time reference.
Yeah. There's so many like melodic motif references.
I mean the whole idea of the games are that Demise became Ganon, who torments Hyrule, and when Ganon comes back, so does a Link and Zelda.
Yeah.
So I don't think it needs to be a specific game, but I do
Ooh.
think if they're gonna pull on strings, they're going to kind of dabble between Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time. Would be my guess.
I don't know that we get
you-
Demise.
Not Demise. Demise is Skyward Sword, so I don't think they're gonna touch it.
Right.
I can already picture a opening scene narration of somebody uncovering a piece of the Triforce and like explain, and there being like an old wise man explaining, oh yes, back so many years ago there was 3 people that represented each of the 3 pieces of the Triforce, and they put it together and like bring them back or
Yeah.
something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, they could do
And
that.
that old wise man, Chris Pratt.
And then he falls backwards into a green tube, never to be seen again.
Yeah. So I think there's plenty to kind of pull from, just like the bits and pieces that are like consistent between each game, and still do something
Mhm.
completely new. That's what I would like to see personally. Anyway, is just a whole new story. Especially if we're gonna have a Link that talks. I think this is it's not retelling Ocarina of Time and making it weird, right? I want weird in a different way. Like just give us a whole new Link, a whole new
Mhm.
Zelda. Um, Ganon can even make some comment that he's fought this battle many times before, and this will be the one he finally wins, and reference those other links. But I think it's...
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
So, I think there's stuff like that. But obviously we're gonna see Link use a bow, I would imagine, and hopefully the boomerang. But I would love to see him pull out that freaking ball and chain from Twilight Princess, or the spinner top from Twilight Princess, or like you said earlier
That'd be
about
cool.
the random crap from Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, like slaps a piece of frozen meat onto the end of his bow and freezes an enemy or something. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do to be referential without it having to be that game's story.
I think you really have to kind of boil it down to figure out what the most essential elements of a Zelda story are, and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like,
Okay.
we're gonna see the Master Sword,
Mhm.
obviously. Probably gonna see, I would assume, Princess Zelda, because it's the title.
Yeah.
Ganon's gonna be there. So then, do they do each one of them as part of the Triforce? I would assume.
I mean, I would assume as well.
It seems to me like it's Zelda, Link, and Ganon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of whatever in the different games, but like it's
Oh,
more
it
that
is.
like
It's
Zelda...
Link is courage, Zelda's wisdom, Ganon is power.
Yes.
Mhm.
In some games it's different. Sometimes Ganon steals the Triforce of Power. Sometimes he is like sealed away with it, and so when he comes back, he already has it. For Link, it's different. Sometimes he has to earn it. Like Wind Waker, he has to go find the pieces of the Triforce of Courage. And actually, the original
Right.
game too, you're finding not... I don't think you're finding the whole Triforce. I think you're just putting together the Triforce of Courage.
That sounds correct to
Because
me.
Zelda already has wisdom, because she's like she is literally the reincarnation of Hylia. And when she gets reincarnated, she is basically born with the Triforce of Wisdom, and then Link's is that he has to earn it generally.
Yes.
Sometimes he's born with it,
Um,
sometimes he has to like actually do something to earn the Triforce.
and that's where casting can be really interesting because of how many different ways Link can come back
Mhm.
in so many different forms. We'll I'm really excited to see kind of how that gets played with.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool things. Like honestly, one of the things that I loved in recent years, I know a lot of people didn't like this game, but Age of Calamity was really fun. I like the Dynasty Warriors style games, and I loved watching Link be like the warrior that they say he is in Breath of the Wild: Tears of the Kingdom, where he's just mowing down hordes of enemies as Ganon's armies attack. So I think that's a cool approach too. It could be like the active battle taking place.
Right.
Um, so I don't know. There's a lot of things. The one thing that I wonder about is so 90% of the Zelda games have dungeons of some variety.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do wonder, like, is that an approach you take in the movie? Do they go through a dungeon or two? You know, like they have to go through the fire temple and it's this whole thing. Like how action packed versus kind of the like Lord of the Rings takes its time. When you really think about what actually happens in a Lord of the Rings movie, it's kind of boiled down to like 3 or 4 events and it's a lot of travel to the event and bad stuff happening. Um
Mhm.
are they going to want to take that kind of slow burn approach, or is this going to be an hour and a half of constant action as we go from place to place? I don't know.
It's hard in a linear narrative. It's hard to write a story that is like we have to do this thing and then this thing and then this thing and then get to the end. Think like if you saw Agatha All Along, The Witch's Road, how it had all those trials.
Yeah.
Each episode was like dedicated to a trial. That works well in a TV show format.
Mhm.
In a movie format, when you're like, okay, we need to do step 1 and then step 2 for dungeon 1, dungeon 2, dungeon 3. I feel like you can't do that in one movie.
Yeah.
It just feels too like, and then this happened, and then this
Mhm.
happened, and not like causality. Um, Trey Parker and Matt Stone gave a writing lesson that has one of my favorite anecdotes for writing, which is like instead of saying, and then this happened, and then this happened, say this happened, and so this happened,
Mhm.
and because this happened, this had to happen, and stuff like that. And so I I don't want to say it's impossible, but it will be more interesting to find a way to break away from the dungeon format.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't even begin to theorize on how to accomplish that.
Yeah. I think they could do like if we're staying referential, I think like Link's first journey being through the Great Deku Tree could be really fun.
Oh, for
Like
sure.
maybe the first piece of the Triforce, of the Triforce of Courage is hidden in the Deku Tree, and that's his challenge, and the Deku Tree was set to like protect it. It's kind of basic, but it would be doable. Hi, Matt. Yes.
Hi. Sorry, I found an important article that just came out 2 days ago
Oh,
from
okay.
VGC. Nintendo reportedly plotting a Zelda movie trilogy.
Oh.
Um, there's some insider guy who says that he's heard people discussing this as a trilogy, that all the primary actors will be signing a
That's right.
3-movie contract to be filmed over 6 years.
Yeah.
And they'll reportedly be filming in New Zealand, which is interesting that we keep
Good.
making Lord of the Rings references because that's where those were filmed.
Yeah.
So that sounds pretty
I
cool to me.
forgot
All of that.
all about that. I did hear about that and completely forgot. So
Well, I think that's amazing. Truthfully.
maybe
I
we
agree.
do. Maybe each movie does focus on a dungeon and then has a big final showdown. Who knows?
Yeah. So here's an interesting one. So Zelda's role has kind of shifted quite a bit over the last few games.
Yeah.
A lot up until like Skyward Sword, Zelda was purely like, I guess that's not even true. Ocarina of Time, she kind of had her own agency um under the guise of Sheik. But like we have just as many examples of Zelda being like the damsel in distress, and the amount of times that she might be kidnapped, but she's also like doing her own plan. And then of course we've got Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, where she takes a massively integral role to what's going on. So I am curious on your guys' thoughts. We saw how the Mario movie handled Peach, um, which I enjoyed. Um, and so I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are maybe with Zelda, especially with Echoes of Wisdom having just come out. I say just, it's like
That's a good point.
a little old now. Not old, but you know what I mean.
Most recently, you could say, it's the
Yeah.
most recent Zelda
Yeah.
game.
But
Um,
I find that conversation a little interesting too.
I agree. I think it could be interesting too. Maybe it's like a character arc that maybe she starts as like a damsel in distress and then eventually grows into her own like abilities and powers and stuff. I think that could be pretty cool to kind of like grow up and become her own like badass heroine. That could be fun.
Yeah, I could see like a I can see like she gets captured, she breaks herself out, and then like runs into Link halfway through the adventure as he is coming to like find her,
Oh,
and
that
then
would
they
be
like
cool.
team up for the second half. You know?
That'd be funny.
That would be awesome. I could see something like because Breath of the Wild kind of took that approach where Link is her guardian, and as you like go through the memories and stuff, Zelda is like actively working on her powers. I think it's one of the few times we see her like in the series like demonstrate that she is like actively like learning abilities. Um and I think that could be really really cool. Like so like movie 1 is like Zelda's journey, and then like movie 2 is Link saving Zelda, and then maybe movie 3 is the big showdown finale type thing. Um, there's a ton of options that are available that will be good if they play their cards right. So we've talked a lot about things that can be good. Let's talk about some fears and some worries. I know we've kind of dabbled in some. Well, what do
Oh
we
gosh,
got?
that's so annoying.
I know, I know. But let's
I
hit
don't
some of
want
them.
Link to talk.
That's an interesting
I
one right
don't want
away.
him to talk.
So I know I've already
That's such an
commented on
important
that.
part of his character.
I know I've already commented on that once that I'm worried about it. The issue is that I'm not opposed to it. I have a very weird like cognitive dissonance thing happening with that right now where I keep bouncing back and forth on how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because my favorite games of all time, Portal and Half-Life, silent protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
I think silent protagonists work really well in a video game because of you controlling the protagonist and it like not wanting to plant ideas. Um, I think that is entirely why Link works as a character is because you get to project so much onto him, and you can't do that in a movie. Which begs the question: should it even become a movie in the first place at all?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm worried. I think if you make it a movie, he has to talk. It would be very cool to see them pull it off without him talking. It would just be a little too experimental for I think what they want to do.
Yeah.
I, as a theater artist, somebody who appreciates avant-garde things, would love that kind of movie. But I recognize that most people won't. And so yeah, I think he has to, but then I just like worry about like should they even be making the movie then?
I mean, look no further than the movie The Quiet Place, right? I remember
Right? Yeah.
I remember watching that movie with my parents and my mom being like, "This is so boring that he hardly said anything." And I'm like, "Mom, do you not know the point of the film? That was the
Yeah.
whole idea."
And then that's like she's totally allowed to
Oh
think
yeah,
that that's just
of
a
course.
bad point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But you'll get the
I
same
mean, we'll
thing, right? If Link doesn't talk, people are going to be like, "Why isn't the main character talking?" Even the people who like The Legend of Zelda will probably say the same thing. Like, why isn't Link? He's in the movie. Why isn't he saying anything? Um, you
I
know,
think for me personally, that's part of why I wanted an animated movie. I think that kind of thing would come across better animated than live action,
I think you're probably right because
like
it's
having a silent
Yeah.
protagonist.
it's weird if there is a human being on screen not saying something at some point, except for
Right.
somebody who hardly does anything and is like a comedic bit. Um, that's not really what Link is all about. But the
Yeah.
thing is, in the games, while Link himself doesn't actually talk, it is assumed that he is talking. Like
There are some dialogue
like
options too that you can
he's
choose from.
he's
Yeah.
not mute. And in a lot of the games, he like is actively he is like actually saying things. We just don't get them. Um, so it is interesting, and there are like manga runs. Like if you want to be super pedantic, there are like plenty of manga runs of like Ocarina of Time, Link to the Past, and Twilight Princess, even of like examples of Link and the kinds of things he would say. My only fear is finding the right balance. I think that's going to be the hardest part of it all is accepting a Link with the voice that he will be given, because I don't want like a Cloud Strife, and I don't want like it's a good example, like a Disney Channel goofy actor, like that
I was just
style.
gonna say it's like striking the balance of like adult to child is going to be really difficult.
Yeah.
Like this cannot have the stylings of the Mario movie.
Yeah, like it really needs to be like a
I
PG
hope not.
13 film. Like if they,
Yeah.
I really think if they want this to be the best it can be, it needs to be a little bit gritty.
This
I
conversation
would like that.
reminded me of one of my favorite bits in any movie of all time. It's from Mel Brooks's silent movie. It's called Silent Movie. There is one single spoken line in the entire movie, and it is by Marcel Marceau, who is a professional mime artist. They like call him, and he says no, and it's so funny.
That's incredible.
That's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's pretty
yeah.
good. So yeah, I think for the most of the movie, that's going to be the part that's going to be the hardest about finding Link's voice, is finding somebody who can still sound like an action badass, but not come off like he's trying to be something else that he's not. You know,
Yeah.
I like how you brought up Cloud Strife because I do think personally I would prefer to kind of lean that direction as opposed to like a little kid Disney Channel goofball type person.
yeah,
Um, I understand that Cloud's a little bit edgier than Link, but there are some similarities between them.
there absolutely are,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying like he can't be. I don't want broody action star, like, because that's really not. I need something in between, like Cloud Strife and like somebody with the energy of like Sonic, right? Because
Yeah.
Link's whole thing, he is the hero of courage. I don't want like some
Mhm.
goofball necessarily, but right? But like Link is,
And it
he's smart. He's courageous. He is, um, when he fights, it's not raw strength. Like he doesn't win all of his fights because he is just innately stronger than everybody else. He is just far braver than anybody else. He's the only one willing to do it, and he has the technical skill. And I think you need a voice that matches that. Like a lot of the stuff,
uh,
a lot of the different ways Cloud has been portrayed. Like I haven't played Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I don't know how he's voiced. But he's always got this like, I've got to find him. Where's Sephiroth? Kind of thing, right?
That's about right.
And that's like not really what I want. Where's Ganondorf?
you said
Where is she?
something. You said something good in that Link is smart. Um, I feel like the answer could be that he's like you said, not brooding, but just knows that he doesn't really have to talk a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Um, particularly when he is in situations with some of the antagonists. He kind of just can let them speak and then he can do his thing. Um,
Right, like a stoicism.
but then exactly some kind of a kind of stoicism, but like not like a rude stoicism
Mhm.
or like a I'm
Mhm.
being so gruff and cool, a calculated
Yeah.
stoicism, and then like that would allow for scenes with, you know, good people, villagers and such, to allow for him to actually communicate and stuff.
Yeah.
A very calculated kind of
Kind of
character.
reminds me, the vibe we're talking about is very close to Auron from Final Fantasy X, or Kingdom Hearts 2. I know he's in that. I don't know how much he speaks in that one. Um,
I don't remember him at all.
he's
So.
the guy with the cast, and he has the big sword that he carries with one arm.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now his actual voice is very kind of gruff, and he's kind of the harsh tutor type character, but it's pretty close to kind of what we're talking about. Somebody who is not going to give a big spiel, is probably a man of few words, but will say just enough to be imposing. Honestly, almost like a John Wick. I don't want. Listen, I love Keanu Reeves. I don't think he should be Link, but that kind of idea of like he's calculated. He knows what he wants.
Now that's in my head, and I want that. I want Keanu Reeves as
Like
Link.
he was just Shadow the Hedgehog. I think that separation might be a little hard. Now a Ganondorf, I could take it.
He's not big enough.
Yeah. Okay.
But if they take the Thanos route,
Yeah. They could.
Right, but Josh Brolin's pretty big himself.
yeah,
He's not a small
he doesn't
guy.
have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think it's the and to kind of continue with that, I think the tone of the film is another worry. I don't think they're gonna go overly goofy. I mean, Zelda does have some silly moments, particularly in the side quests, and I think there's potential room for that, especially if it's a trilogy, to kind of let him have some moments. Um, but I need, like, when stuff gets real, I want it to be real. You know?
They could follow a traditional like trilogy thing, like how Harry Potter got darker and darker and darker. Like it could start off, the first movie could be kind of happier, goofy, with some darker elements near the end, and then it can get darker over the course of the trilogy.
Yeah.
They could strike a balance.
Yeah. I think so.
It sounds like the story of like Ocarina of Time to me. Like the beginning is a little bit more lighthearted, and then
Yeah,
you're adult Link, and then it's darker, and then at the very end, the final showcase battle. Like if they're doing a trilogy, you just break that game up into 3 movies, and that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I could see that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm also and again with the tone, I really hope we get Koji Kondo to do some orchestral music for this. That was like the one thing that I still really don't like about the Mario movie is just how much like licensed music there is. I don't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like fine, right? It's serviceable. But I really liked the stuff they came up with that utilized the Mario music. And so much of Zelda's music is already pretty film adjacent, right?
Yeah.
You think about like the Hyrule Field theme, or like even like the Kakariko Village theme. I think I really hope that we get some stuff. If it's not solely done by Koji Kondo, which I don't think it will, I would really love just some sweeping orchestral versions of Zelda music
It
and
would
Zelda
be inappropriate
adjacent.
for them to not do that.
Right.
Like, so I mean, we even got some of the references in Mario, but like Zelda is so defined by music
Mhm.
in since Ocarina in so many aspects of the game. A whole game is named after a musical instrument.
Yeah.
At least one. I don't know every Zelda game off the top of my head. It would just be completely inappropriate to not use the themes that have already been laid out and refined over the course of 3 decades.
Yeah, I agree. However,
Agreed.
you could say the same thing about Mario music, you know? Like who doesn't know
Yeah.
a bunch of the Mario music?
We got a tiny bit of it. but
That's
it's also like
precisely my point.
but it's the thing is, yes, the Mario music is iconic, but it is the beating heart of Zelda.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I would say that
Also,
there's a small
clear, I
point
do think
towards
it
it
was
being live action.
Yeah, I do. To be clear, I
You go
do
first,
think
Sterling.
it was a bad choice to have mm, the Mario music not featured
Mhm.
that much. I just do think it's way
Agreed.
more important for Zelda.
Yeah, I'm with you. I knew what you meant. I was just being my normal self on the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah. Play your character.
Yeah. But yeah, that is one like
I was just gonna say that like I feel like having a live action movie makes it less likely for like the sort of licensed music like needle drop moments. I feel like those are more often in animated movies outside of like Guardians of the Galaxy where they're very intentional.
mhm,
They
So
get
I
they
feel
get
like having a more sweeping orchestral thing does fit live action well
Yeah.
and is easier to translate.
mhm.
yeah, cool. I think that's all I've really got on it. We've got kind of covered a vast majority of
It's
it.
hard. It's. I mean, when all of the discussion is pure
Oh
speculation,
yeah,
it wasn't until we started talking
Mhm.
about it that I was like, wow, it is hard to talk about this.
it's
You got
fu-
nothing.
it's fun to talk about though. Like when these movies get announced and before we have anything, it is fun to be like, okay, what do I want from this movie? Which I think is what a lot of this conversation was really about. Like, what do I want this Zelda movie to be? And I did similar things with the Mario movie when it was announced, but we pretty quickly got a trailer. I feel like
Mhm.
we've kind of had a while to think about a Zelda movie even before the announcement, and then we got the tweet announcement, and now we know this movie's going to be here in 2 years.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of opportunity for them to just drip feed us information about this movie.
I know pre-production can take a long time. It is just baffling that it has taken this long for pre-production.
And I was about to say if they're gonna shoot on location in New Zealand, they've got to start doing that here pretty soon. If they want to
Before
shoot and then cut and edit and then do all the post production stuff, like
Yeah.
assuming they want to do it well, it's gonna take a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of the prep work has been done. Like I'm sure the script has been started. I'm sure the storyboarding has been started. I'm sure all the Zelda folks. Out of the director's name is escaping me at the moment. It's not Fujikawa. It's a different guy, I think.
Sorry, of what was it? Sorry.
Aonuma, Zelda's
Oh,
director,
I
Oh,
don't
the
know.
game director. I
game
thought you meant the
director.
movie
Sorry, no,
director.
Aonuma. I'm sure he is, have conversations about that. So I imagine a lot of the beginning stuff has been done, and it's just a matter of getting the right people based on that, and getting all the locations picked out. We got to find the spot that looks exactly like the Fire Temple, or actually, if they're gonna pick a temple, they're gonna pick the Water Temple.
They better not. They better not. I could. But any temple realistically will probably be like a CG landscape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So, but this was super
Unless
fun.
they find a really big tree.
True, that they can walk into.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been really fun. Thank you guys for joining me on this very speculative wish list discussion on the Zelda movie. I'm sure there will be more as stuff starts to come out.
Oh yeah, very excited.
Can't wait.
But we didn't mention this at the start, but we're gonna go ahead and mention it now. Also, Sterling, thank you for joining us as part of Up Download. We haven't talked about it in a while because we haven't uploaded a Games Parlay in a while, but Games Parlay is under the Up Download sort of umbrella. We have been doing all sorts of stuff on our Twitch channel, and actually, this episode was recorded via Twitch. And if you're watching the Spotify video podcast version, you can actually see our little Twitch chat in the bottom right corner. So if this is something that interests you, come check us out at twitch.tv/upupdownload or youtube.com/@upupdownload, because that's how YouTube does it. And you can follow us
Makes sense.
live. Yeah, of course. You can follow us live and potentially join in on these conversations as they come up. Uh, as we upload this, there's all kinds of information. There was just a Switch 1 Direct not that long ago. We started this discussion with that. We have the Switch 2 launch. I'm sure we will cover an episode. I'm positive that at some point we will cover the Switch 2 launch and talk about all of that. It's a very exciting time for us to begin really getting into games. I'm gonna call it games journalism, games podcasting, whatever you want to call it. We're gonna be here talking about video games.
Regurgitating games journalism.
Yeah.
Regurgitation.
We're gonna find you the best articles that we already looked at to bring to you. But also aside from that, we have an anime podcast called Otaku that has some episodes already that I'm hoping we can record back at some point soon. And we also just do a bunch of games on our Twitch channel. I was speedrunning Penny's Big Breakaway for like a couple weeks there, and we love to do Archipelago and all sorts of stuff. So we are actively trying to grow our community. So if you would like to be part of that group that grows with us, again, it's twitch.tv/upupdownload or youtube.com/@upupdownload. You can find us at all of our things over there. That's my spiel. Come join us. Anyway,
Yay.
we'll catch y'all next time. See you, everybody.
Bye.